empty. Funny many home wheels strike them down, waiting for an axe. Maybe I'm dead romance were watching me in bed until I took some makeup oil and wrapped it round my head. Now I got my pinball hat on, my mind and that is on. I got my pinball hat on and ready with my
All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
And Mecky's muted.
And Mecky was muted. Welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave.
and Mecky, who is no longer muted, live from the Sydney studios in Australia. Jump into the chat room at freedomslips.com while we're in the air. You can listen from there. And follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Check out shinysideout.net for our show archives, notes, and links we paste into the chat during the show. With so many ways to listen to us, it is difficult not to get confused. Now, you can get an app. Revolution Radio, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, RadioTuner, Speaker.com, iHeart, and Live 365. And if you live in Kentucky, it is FM, that's right, WZZR 101.3. Okay? At home, you can listen on a Grace Tabletop Radio, or if you're driving around in a GM motor vehicle with the receiver-enabled radio. All revolutions in radio. Lots of radio. You can buy a CD of your favorite host for the 2013 season. Each CD costs $30. Check out the info on the station's website. The number to call in if you are in the United States of America is 347-688-2902. Or via Skype, you simply add Freedom Screen, one word. Solaris, of course, once again had a great show, Dave.
Yes, she did. And I forget, Richard was it Miller? Let me have a look to see. Yes, it was.
That's right,
Richard Allen Miller. That was an awesome interview. I listened to all of that. And, he's so exciting to listen to and, prolific writer. I can't wait to hear to read the next 4 editions that he's going to look at to put out this year. Amazing stuff.
Quite prolific, I have to say.
Absolutely, indeed. And it's just fantastic stuff. Hey, Mecky, this week has been... And there's still no end to the flight MH370 saga, is there not?
No, there isn't. The one thing that is happening now is the battery of the black box is going to run out very soon. Okay, guys? It's going to happen. Which means if we don't find it soon, within the next few days, we will never find it, ever. Of course, Dave and I have our own theories about that, but that's one thing. There's another thing, Dave, that came across that was posted online. Mm-hmm. A person that was on the flight as an IBM employee, I forget his name. I will look it up in a second for you guys.
He was
but essentially,
ex-CEO.
That's right.
Yeah,
I think that's
CEO,
right.
Yep.
And he had hidden his phone in a private place. Apparently, what happened was the plane was hijacked. They were blindfolded and separated, and then taken away somewhere. Love the Revolution Radio Cup. Now, what happened is that he sent a message out from wherever he is. It was essentially just a black picture, but the data that is embedded in the image, and make no mistake, there's always data embedded when you send something with your phone, as well as the GPS information that was transmitted, puts him just outside Diego Garcia Air Base in the Indian Ocean. Okay, so he said that apparently the blindfolded and they were kept in cells separately. All the passengers, well, he is kept separately. He doesn't know about the other passengers, but that's his assumption, I guess. So is that true or not? I don't know. I don't know. It certainly isn't any more mysterious than the rest of it, Dave.
Yeah, that's true. There's been a lot of talk about that base itself. I mean, if you're looking for it on Google Earth, it's pretty easy to find. Just go to the exact middle of the Indian Ocean. I kid you not, that's where it is. Right, the exact middle. And then look for what's called the British Indian Ocean Territory. It's a tiny atoll, and on it is a tremendously large air base, including B-52s and you name it. You can see all of the marks from all the planes that have been parked there. Now, this is obviously an older image, but it still checks out. It still is it. And there was another base north of that, which was purchased recently from the Australian government, and that what the Americans were going to do was they said, it's only going to be for drones. We're going to extend the runway for a drone. That just makes sense. And it was going to be for the use of being able to refuel those B-52s and have them in flight refueled to extend their range. Now, I think that's pretty interesting. So, yes, the base is real. The information is credible. It could be the reason why it was so easily dismissed. All the credible witnesses saying that it flew over Sumatra. Oh, sorry, the Maldives.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's probably enough. Maybe the pilot was, hang on, I'm doing something to video here, tapping my nose like a secret, super secret message. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he was in on it. Maybe, whatever. It doesn't take too much effort to fly a plane. Those don't hate me, but for those people who are qualified pilots, good on you. It is a challenge, and you're responsible for a bunch of lives. But if you're qualified via the military, you're still qualified. So, a lot of ex-military pilots go the civilian route when they're done flying complicated aircraft. So, yeah, look, I don't know. I was still talking to people who say that it was it's got the hallmarks of a UFO. It's got the hallmarks of Bermuda Triangle. I've got this feeling it was in Cambodia or something like that. But, I personally wish we knew more. We have the Prime Minister, don't we? Prime Minister of Malaysia down here in Perth in Australia on the west coast. And they flew in this week and were overseeing some of the duties, in the recovery of this thing. And the media has been pretty quiet recently because they've said, we don't need to talk about it anymore. It's on the bottom of the ocean. Forget it. Just forget it. We'll never find it. And then suddenly all these little whispers come out in the news. And one is just from yesterday. This morning. We heard something. Okay, you heard something. What did you hear? Well, it was similar, not exactly the same as, but similar to what a transponder would sound like. Doesn't mean it was the transponder. Still,
was it a whale song?
You know how if I go on my deck and there's a bunch of parrots and I say hello, one of them will say hello back because one of them's an escapee from someone's cage in someone's backyard. I laugh and think that wouldn't that be hilarious if there was some sea creature that was just doing it. That's funny. Maybe because they announced this week there was a submarine we'd never heard of underwater listening for it. Yeah? So
possible?
Maybe it's got the transponder on it. And the ship that they've spent all this money to deploy to hopefully find it will just turn up a ping and go, well, it was close to us. We don't know exactly where it is, but, we'll keep going with a hunt here and look for something. I don't know. But,
look,
it's never ending. This thing is,
Well,
how much credibility do you put on this image?
Well, that's the question. But the thing is this, right? I mean, if something doesn't happen within the next few days, it will be a mystery forever. Okay, mm-hmm. It is that simple. I mean, unless somebody comes forward with the truth, and we encourage you here. This is the age of the internet. You can do it anonymously. Wear the mask like I do. Wear the mask. Okay.
Yes, very French.
Actually, it's Guy Fawkes.
Yes, that's right.
But the guy who tried to blow up, I think, Westminster Parliament some 500 years ago. But the point is that you can, if you know the truth out there, and this is an appeal to you guys, by the way, let us know. Let the people know that had relatives on the plane. Let them. I mean, this is horrible. There's nothing. I mean, it's bad if you know someone has passed. It is worse if you are constantly left in suspended, in suspended suspense, right? Because you don't know if they're alive or dead, or the plane is missing. What happened? And if there are people at Diego Garcia Air Base that know anything about this, if you have a conscience, if something pangs and twings you, and it's not the right thing, and if truly the passengers are there, let them out. You have to ask yourself. I mean, when one day, when you lie there dying, will that be something that you can, leave this world with? Can you sleep at night? Is the question, right?
That's why all those deathbed confessions.
Right. Exactly. Nice. Yes. And look, and that's the thing. I mean, do the human thing. Do the human thing. Do the thing that makes you human. Right? Do you want to be locked up in a black box somewhere? I think not. And make no mistake, these guys are not criminals. They're citizens. They're passengers on a commercial plane. Okay, so if indeed someone has got them locked up somewhere for whatever obscure reason, somebody out there must still have a conscience and feel something. Surely.
Do you know what's really bizarre is during the week I heard that the MI6 and the FBI, so CIA and MI6, had their own peeps on board. And
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Despite them, not giving away their actual names, and clearly the flight list would tell you who they were, under what false names they were running. But that's why one of those initial things it said, it's just one of those things. People fly on false passports all the time, said the Malaysian government.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. Don't worry about it.
No, it happens all the time. It's okay. It's every week.
Yeah. In fact, every flight leaving Malaysia, has almost everyone. And look, the crisis actor thing, Meki, like they're tearing down the Sandy Hook school at the moment to destroy all the evidence, clearly. And I don't want to, pain on the people who are suffering, but the crisis actor thing came up in another conversation this week as well, which was, how do we know none of those people are just crisis actors? How do we know none of it's real? All these questions come up. Hey, look, they're fair. Each one of those is a fair question. The sister plane who's in Tel Aviv that was purchased in November, and the flight registration number, look it up, is 9MMRI. The flight registration number of the plane it's said to have gone missing is 9MMRO. The ACARS data is missing. All of the Israel embassies have been closed around the world.
Have they?
Yeah, they absolutely have.
That.
They said, it was just a protest. The people are protesting.
Huh.
Yeah, so why did you close all the embassy? Oh, because they're the people protesting. What? Against what? No one knows. Look it up. Try and find out the real story behind all of their embassy closures. There's something very strange. Yeah, there is a lot going on. There's 40,000 troops on the Ukraine border.
Yeah, and look, I was going to just get to that. By the way, sorry, hi Gerber and hi Hovey. How are you guys doing in the chat room? Nice to see you again, Hovey. Ger, of course, you're always there. But Hovey, good to see you back in the chat. And the Ukraine situation has thrown us back 40 years into the Cold War. 40 years, right? It's no longer capitalism opposing communism now. It's really now Russia against the United States, with the United States being the quite obviously weaker player in many ways, having depleted itself.
It's a power play, Mickey.
100%. Now the question though is, how far can this escalate? What else can happen? And how many other nations will now feel justified annexing territory?
Annexing territory. I love that management speak. Let's just go annex some territory. Awesome.
Invading is so much more negative.
That's
good.
Right. Annexing is growth. It's all talking about growth.
It is growth, right? Hyman's Reich. It's all about living space for the German people. No, that's not nice. But
mercy.
the truth is this. I mean, whenever you see things like that, there's a good reason. There's always a good reason. And we spoke about this particular one. It's an all year round deep water port that doesn't freeze over. That's what the Russians now have access to.
It
Otherwise,
is
their
a
fleet
military asset.
totally, absolutely. And the Americans know this. They're not stupid. You know, this is realpolitik. You know, this is what happens. But what about the Chinese now? Are they going to annex those islands that are being disputed with Japan? I mean,
they were worthless anyway. Do you see them? Bits of
Yeah,
rock
I know.
sticking out of the ocean you couldn't do anything with anyway.
yeah. Well, again, it could either be a pretext or there's something there that we don't know about, right? So,
Well, there you go.
it's- yeah. So look, the truth is this, right? What will happen next? And the answer is, at this point, I really don't know, because I'm a student of politics, I'm a student of history, and right now we're at a very critical juncture. Right? This is not doomsday talk; it is a fact. It's a fact. We
That's
spoke about this before. Right? This is the same situation, an amalgamation of situations that existed prior to World War One and prior to World War Two.
I like your use of amalgamation on that. Yes.
Thank you, sir. But it is right. So we had a world economic crisis, and we're still not really out of it. And there might be another one coming, another correction, like they call it, another
Correction.
corporate, another correction. We need another market correction after we annex some territory. No, it's a severe situation.
Furious as Cromulus.
So unemployment is high, both in the States and elsewhere. A lot of people globally are living well below the poverty line. You've got an old power that is losing its power, as it were, the United States. You've got other powers gaining in strength, the most obvious being China, Russia not far behind. And you've got other powers rising, struggling now. So it's a little more complex than prior to World War One. We don't really have secret treaties anymore, but then we may have secret treaties. I mean, the whole problem with World War One was that everybody had a secret treaty with everybody else. So, you know, things just took on a bit of a domino effect in the lead up to it. And World War Two, like I said, economic crisis, which we have now, high unemployment. We also have a move toward the extreme left and the extreme right. If you look at the political landscape, specifically in Europe, you can see that as well. You have a big business trying to control, controlling governments, most notably the United States government, is being controlled by big business. And I say it again, and I know I've said it before, we are no longer living in a capitalist system. It is now a corporate fascist system. Corporate fascism is what you're living under in the States. Corporate fascism. Won't explain it now, did it before. So these are all things that are coming to a head. China is rising. China is growing. I think about 10% each year, which is amazing. They're the major consumers of resources globally. They are also very smart because they're going everywhere, trying to secure the resources that the Americans are seemingly letting go. You go to Africa, you find a lot of Chinese. You go to Central Asia, you go to South America, the Chinese are everywhere. They're in Australia. They're buying up property here. They're buying up farmland. Okay, one of the biggest one of the biggest farms, I think, was bought by the Chinese recently, with the view to develop it. But that's fine. I think it's okay to. Also, they're buying utilities in Australia. You know this, right, Dave? They're buying utilities.
They own the whole of New South Wales power production.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Again, you can look at it this way. Who knows what's going to happen? There's also real life scenarios of invasion in Australia by the Indonesians in cargo ships off the coast of the major cities, and all the Australian cities, bar two, are on the coast. So there's not much happening inland, to be honest with you. You take the coastal cities, you have Australia pretty much. That's the truth. So, and it wouldn't be that hard. You can't conquer Australia, like the continent, all of it. In the same way that you can't really conquer like Russia, the whole country. It's too big, right? But you can certainly conquer the major cities, and you've got 80% of the population if you do that. So it's interesting.
The turnover would be pretty quick if that's all it takes.
Oh, yeah.
Really.
Totally, 100%. And so it is a very strange time with a lot of moving parts. It is no longer a certain world. I mean, during the Cold War, at least we had certainty. Well, sorry, we were taught there was certainty. There were good guys, that was us, right, the West, and there was the bad guys, the East, right? Nice and simplistic. That's all good. And then it got more complex. But we had some bad guys again, the terrorists. The Arabs, and then there was like this enemy picture there, and then you had in the States you had domestic terrorism, and but the thing is this: these things run their course, and you can only use them for so long until you run out of bad guys. Ideally, you've killed them all, which you've shown that you can in the States. Well done, and you need something new. So what is the next thing? The truth is, the only way for the current economic fiasco to come to an end. There's actually two ways. One, there's a war. Right? If there's a world war, it all starts from tabula rasa, blank slate. You can start again, build it up like after World War One, after World War Two, especially after World War Two. You could invest money and make money and so forth. Right? Of course, killing millions in the process. Or, and now this is going to sound crazy, or we have a major historic event, and by that I mean, now what's a major historic event? Well, think about it. I mean, we've seen everything, we've done everything. Finding life outside of this world.
I've got my hand up, Mr. Cotter.
Please, sir.
I think that an alien presence revealing itself, or the information of something like that. Yep.
100%. And that is the kind of historic event I think we're talking about. I mean, recently 2 movies came out: The Last Days on Mars, Europa Report, and there was another one. No, it's 3. Yeah, so the point, though, is that they are dealing with finding life in the solar system. Okay, that's really the crux of those movies. Not unlikely. I mean, it's not unlikely. It's not impossible, certainly. I mean, maybe not highly likely, but Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken, Jupiter, right? Yeah, is certainly capable of potentially sustaining life. Mars certainly could. Very maybe different life to what we're used to, but certainly there's indications that it's possible. But I'm talking about something more historic. I mean that would be historic, yes, but even more historic would be to find a life that we can communicate with, and maybe have been communicating with for a long time. Who knows? But again, we have to be careful that it's not a false flag kind of thing. Maybe these are people we've been talking to for a long time, and only now are they revealing themselves to. I don't know, to usher in a new age, help us alleviate a crisis. Who knows? But just make sure that you keep your ears open and your eyes peeled, because something will come very soon. Because it has to. If not, the entire world will disintegrate. Okay? Within the next 10 to 15 years, the way we live will no longer be sustainable. It's over. Finished. There's nothing. There's no initiative, no carbon trading off and whatnot you can do now. It's done. We must face the consequences. We have now reached the end of our civilization. There's now something else waiting for us.
That's absolutely true. And this is one of those. Yeah, this is one of those things. It sort of works really well into a segue, Mickey, to do with what today's date is historically.
Right. Good point. Now, today is, in fact, yes, the 6th of April, yes.
Yes. Well, it is now, in the future. It is in the future here, not in the US. In the US, you're just climbing over into the 6th. Welcome to it. It's nice.
That's right.
Back 48 years ago, in April 6th, 1966, Westall, little town in Victoria, and they had a landing of a UFO at the school. 200 people saw it. Afterward, there was a big clean-up and a non-disclosure. Military involved, police, or what looked like military police. There were people who weren't attendees of the school, like local farmers and things like that also saw it. There was people who were asked to, and no records, Mickey, of this, imagine. So the military, like people turned up, which apparently the only people in Australia that had camouflaged uniforms were the U.S. military that was stationed here. I love that. Stationed here in Australia during the Cold War. So, and it was just certainly in full swing, and they looked like they were covering it up. And it looked that there were some planes that came in to the scene, and the UFO flew away from it. Now, there are a few little things to do with this. I think 2 days prior, on the 4th of April, there was a fellow who saw a UFO in a field. And on the same day as Westall, in the evening leading into Westall during the day, a fellow had died on the same road where this guy saw the lights. And he said they were so blinding that he nearly stacked his car. Even his headlights' beams bent towards the object that was on the side of the road. So there was some kind of gravitational interference with that. It's truly amazing. And around that whole date, that date range, per se, between 4 days either side, mass sightings all over Victoria of the same styled craft. And yet, all that remains, the camera that was used by one of the teachers at Westall to take photographs of the UFO as it came down. All the children went crazy for it. The military general or military person snatched the camera off her, not just the film but the entire camera. Much to her, she was wrestling it, trying to maintain that it's hers, and they took it away. So look, if it was nothing, why would the military be involved? If it was nothing, why would they take the camera? Everyone described it as being, metallic with no joins, anti-gravity, silent, all of the stuff that we know today in folklore, of course. But in those days, no, all the sci-fis, no sci-fi had silent UFOs because that doesn't look good on film. They all made whirring sounds and rotated and did all these awkward things that mechanically. We had a mechanical society, so everything had to be mechanical. You had to have things that moved and did things and made sounds because that's what they did. But that's the pop culture. But no, in reality, these things were silent. They sped off instantaneously, assuming instantaneous acceleration. And they defied our laws of physics at the time. And I think that's amazing. And if it was nothing, why would everyone become involved? And there are still people alive today. Sadly, most of the teachers have passed away 48 years later. And those who are talking are amazing. Their stories are amazing. That one girl who became, in contact with the craft, who was unconscious, treated by ambulance workers at the scene afterwards, never returned to school.
Okay.
She disappeared. She was there after the occurrence, but then she never went back to school again. So,
wow.
So you have to say, these poor people, right? The people who are involved in these things, who don't get closure, who, look to the government for insight on it and are told that, number one, they're not allowed to talk about whatever it was that happened, and number two, whatever it was that happened wasn't anything that was important. And number three, UFOs aren't real. So what is it? What is it that happened? If you and me, Becky, if we abscond in a Ben Rich era UFO, right? Imagine that, right? We abscond in one and we go and land at a school just to freak out the establishment. It was the 60s. I'm not sure that we'd have jobs after doing that.
No, probably not.
No, if it was US military equipment, certainly not. But
no. We wouldn't have much of a private life either.
No, that would have ended pretty quick after the occurrence, yeah. So I can only assume at the moment, with all the information that's of that time period, is that there was definitely something going on. I mean, definitely. The military were involved in covering it up, and just like every other piece at the time, there was certainly a lot of activity, and if none of it was real, why would the military be involved? And you can't say because it was secret military, top secret equipment, because you wouldn't land at a school. Yeah? You'd
No.
be doing this
Yeah,
at some
that's-
test range somewhere, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. But if UFOs at the time, looking 48 years ago, were trying to make public contact with people to open their consciousness or their awareness of them being there, why did it stop? I say bring it back. Let's do it. Let's mentally think about this and try and bring back so that we've got, UFOs just appearing or decloaking all over the planet. That'd be awesome. Bring that on.
How good would that be?
It'd be pretty good, but then of course we have the false flag alien invasion thing.
See? Yeah, look, this is what happens when you go down this road, guys. So you want to be very careful that you don't end up in the same mind space as Dave and I. Because that's not a good mind space to be in. You don't trust anyone. The truth might be out there, but they're all lying to you. They are all lying to you. On that note, this is not a lie. We're going on a little expedition next weekend to Devil's Rock in Australia to see the spaceman. And Mr. Hovey is going to take us there, and we're going to link up with Graham Hancock's people.
Graham Hancock,
which is
right.
pretty cool, right? And there's also a link to Klaus Donner. Some of you may know he's sort of the new, or this century's Eric von Däniken. And to some extent, he's done a lot of interesting stuff. I've got his books, and he's got a few good videos as well. So we're gonna go out in my Jeep, and we're gonna take the high road and try to find also find the spaceman again and try to take some video of the event that we can share with you on our channel if you like. Well, we're going to share it anyway. You can look at it if you like, and it should be all right. So we'll see who is going to be able to come to that. I haven't seen if Dave is available or not. He hasn't answered me, but he likes to keep me in suspense. It's all good, but it should be good. It puts us in contact with Graham to some extent, and maybe we'll be able to bring you Graham on the show. That would be nice. I'd like to talk to him. I've read all his books. I even came across him watching a Michael Palin travel video. I think it was Pole to Pole, where Michael Palin runs into Graham Hancock in Africa. And Graham is talking about these ancient African civilizations to Michael Palin. Fascinating stuff. We'll see how that works out. Dave, do we have any luck with our potential guest at this point?
No, the potential guest, though, perfectly confirmed during the week, and not a frequent guest, but a past guest who welcomes any contact with us. It looks like maybe some sleeping in or something's going on. I think what we'll do, we'll roll as much as we can and see where we get to.
Absolutely. We have a show prepared, for just such an eventuality, of course. But I want to spend a bit more time on the Westall phenomenon, and I guess phenomena like it, right? So, if the military is involved, Dave is right, and if it in fact it did appear in a high school, right, and in fact all of the events happened as they are described, and I want to extend this now to Roswell as well, and maybe the Kecksburg UFO, and all of these other events, right, including some of the Russian reported sightings and landings, in fact.
Even the South African schoolyard one too.
Yeah, good point. Now you have to ask yourself, I mean, what's going on? Something is going on, right? I don't know what it is. Are they visitors? Maybe, probably. Are they dimensional travelers, time travelers? Do they want to look up their ancestors? Do they want to kill their grandfather before their mother is born? I don't know. But something is going on, and it's not easy to ascertain exactly what it is. That's why we bring you the information. That's why we're asking you as well, to give us information. I mean, we are reaching a whole bunch of people here, which hopefully have some information to share with us. People are asking to come on our show now to talk, which is great. But we really are after the meat and potato information, the stuff that's coming from the people, right? If you're a regular person, Dave and I, we are regular people, right? We are not getting paid to do this. If we've always been interested in this kind of stuff, sure enough, right? And we've done a lot of research.
Like money.
Yes, we would.
We would,
But But the truth is that we're just regular folks, and this is all quite serendipitous the way it happened for us. So we do want the information from you. I mean, the sightings that you might have had, or the experiences, and maybe they're not sightings. Maybe you've got a whole different explanation. I mean, last week we spoke about fairies and how the fairy abductions and the fairy abductions, especially of babies and mothers, seems to tie in with the modern visitors phenomenon of hybrids. Alien and human hybrids, or whatever it might be. So this is a phenomenon that has been with us for a very long time. We've talked about the art that shows objects in the sky that appear to be flying. There's one very strange one at the Crucifixion of Christ. It's the artwork, and you see this sort of spherical thing, sort of like a meteor or comet, stylized inside though, in a cross-sectional diagram almost sits a person. So
and there's two of those in the same painting.
Yeah, that's right.
On either side of the painting, to the left and to the right, in the sky. Yeah. And one appears to be chasing the other, and the one in front appears to be looking behind itself at the one that's chasing it.
Correct. So you ask yourself, that's all very odd. That's all very strange. Okay, fair enough. Let's say you tick 99% off to an overactive imagination and maybe too much weed. Could happen. Granted, hey, I don't know. But the point is, there might be 1%. Maybe, in fact, out of 1 billion unusual events, again, as I said it before, only one needs to be right or true to make the phenomenon real. What happened at the skeptics discussion recently, sir?
Do you know what? I was talking to, it's actually a father of a friend. Now, he's an educated man. He has a great standpoint on everything that he talks about. He thinks all of his stuff through, and he has a definite reason. And if you invite the conversation, he is polite, and he will present the facts that gives him his point of view. He's not a simple naysayer who ignores everything and just says, no, oranges are red. He doesn't do that, right?
Right.
And he's tremendous. So we're having a little discussion this afternoon before the show, and he was saying, I said, oh, look, we've got a guest on today, and he's talking about what the poster is behind me on the wall, but it's really just a green screen. That is February 25th, 1942. You've heard it before. It's the Battle of Los Angeles. This was witnessed by thousands of people. 15,000 rounds of ammo was shot at this object in the sky. And he hadn't heard of it, so I told him, and he said, he raised a couple of really good points, and I like this from a skeptical point of view. He said, you can't keep a lie, like you can't keep it silent. You can't withhold the truth. People will talk. It's people's nature. I said, that's right, except, knowing that they might themselves be at risk of death. Until they get to the deathbed, they don't confess. And I said, it depends on where you're looking for evidence. He goes, well, if you show me some credible evidence, an extraordinary, and he said the Carl Sagan quote, and I reiterated that that's the Carl Sagan quote. If there's extraordinary thing to prove, you need extraordinary evidence. And I said, look, it's been here all along. I said, it is here. It is this. And and he said, but all it is a photo and a paper. This Los Angeles, Battle of Los Angeles. I said, no, there were 15,000 people. People died because they were looking at it. People died because of the shrapnel. There were car accidents, police, military, trained military observers with their fingers on the trigger of anti-aircraft guns. Spotlight people is totally paranoid. He goes, aha, paranoid. Yes, they were paranoid because of World War II. Yes, they were. They were paranoid, and everything in the sky they were looking at. And, of course, this thing came over, and they were paranoid because they thought it was something that was going to threaten them and harm them. And so they shot at it. It's not unlike the Americans to shoot first, and ask questions later. I say that with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek. However, he said it was probably just a weather balloon or something, and I said, well, 15,000 rounds of anti-aircraft fire would probably bring one of those things down, and of course that was claimed in the paper. And then they retracted that statement in the paper on the February 26th or 27th. They said, "Oh, you've embarrassed us because the cover story of it being an air balloon of some kind. What, you mean 15,000 rounds and trained personnel couldn't bring down a weather balloon?"
Some bad aim there.
Yeah, that's right. But as you can see from both the footage and also the still photography, is that they got some great shots onto it. Yeah, these are flak cannons, and with traces, got tracers and everything. They're shooting large ammunition at this thing, and it just doesn't come down. I think they're 20 mil or 30 mil rounds, and it's a.
These are rounds. These are cannon. These are not rifles. Okay, this is artillery.
That's right. It's
okay.
Well,
so
yeah, these are heavy things. These are heavy placements. Yeah, on the beach fronts, and they were shooting at this thing, and it just did not come down. Right. And eventually, it got bored or had been there long enough for its liking and just left back out to sea. And the people, it was so significant that people still talk about it, and they still meet. They still meet on the anniversary of it, February 25th, get down to Huntington. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. And this is, from a skeptic's point of view, and this was my friend's father, respectfully, of course, because he really is a tremendous fellow. He just said, look, where's the evidence? Wouldn't we be surrounded by it? And I said, how about, the reverse engineering of equipment that's been found at crash sites and things like that? He goes, but it's human made. Well, why would the Americans, who are at the top of the technological tree for the last 45 years, why would they be reverse engineering their own equipment? If they're at the top and they found something, it's theirs. Why would they bother to reverse engineer it? They knew how it worked. And some of the most amazing things have come from this, right? And he said, oh, but they don't know what they're talking about. I said, well, there's 400 people that have come forward saying they've worked exclusively either with aliens, in partnership with them, or on reversed engineered technology. Even Stanton Friedman, the nuclear physicist, was asked to take a role on board a project which was to work out how they flew, because they didn't know how they flew. The greatest technology we had on the planet at the time was nuclear, and of course, it doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do.
No.
Yeah, because
and look, you're right. It's not. The power source is quite different, I believe. But think about it this way. The thing we're talking about here is people asking about evidence, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a fair question. That's a fair comment. But all the evidence that is being presented is just disbelieved. If someone comes forward, a whistleblower, maybe anonymously, whatever, they no, crackpot, crazy. I can't believe him. Don't know. How does this person know? Well, maybe because that person was there. If there's physical evidence, that's also denied. That can't be. It can't be. What? It just isn't possible.
I love their justification in the way they say it. It can't be true.
How can it be true? I mean, if it were true, then things would be different. Why would things be different? Things would be exactly as they are, because it's what it is. The physical evidence. Look around you. Mm-hmm. Go to those ancient sites. Go and look at the stones at Baalbek. Do yourself a favor. You try to move 1,000 tons. Good luck to you. Try to build a pyramid, right? Try to do, in fact, any of the engineering feats that were undertaken back in those days, and aligned to astronomical markers in the sky, as above, so below, right? And if you're familiar with this, then you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things out there that are evidence. The mechanism of Antikythera. Oh yeah, there was an isolated genius who put that together. Okay. Right. No, fair enough, right? The batteries of Baghdad. So the principle of electricity, right, was understood thousands of years ago, right? The soot, the non-existence of the soot marks inside
That's right.
the Great Pyramid, right? No soot marks means no torches. No torches means total darkness. No windows. Okay, no windows. The constructions of other sites, so in fact, Gothic cathedrals. I don't know if you've heard of Gothic glass. Look it up. Look it up. We don't know how to make it today. And there are other things that are mysterious as well. I mean, look at the layout of Washington. Other cities, Paris, London. They're all laid out to Freemasonic symbolism. Okay, Freemasonic symbolism. Again, these are, and if you talk about it, oh no, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. No, because it's there. It's right in front of you. Okay, you
I'm looking at you, Mecky.
It's nuts. So other things as well. I mean, you ask for evidence. Well, the evidence is there, but you have to open your eyes. You have to see it, and then once you've seen it, you have to accept it, incorporate it into your worldview. Very difficult. I understand that. I get it. But don't say it's not there. Don't say we're not. We are surrounded by it. UFO sightings, unidentified flying objects. Okay, that's what it means. It doesn't mean spacecraft. It doesn't mean alien mothership, because if it was, then we knew what it is. We would know, right? But we don't, so we call it unidentified. So they are there. These sightings happen, and some are, of course, misidentified, sure enough, but other sightings are real. What are they? I don't know what they are. Could they be visitors? Could they be spacecraft? Absolutely, they could be. Could be anything.
Do you know what? I know. Do you know, this was something really interesting as well. It's when I said, when I was discussing this, of course, it's all off the record because, I won't reveal his name. But he's, like I said, he prefers to keep a skeptical cap on. And I respect it. And Mecky and I do. We respect people who are using all of their mountain of information, what they have, what they know of, to make judgment calls. That's all we do. We just have our finger in more sides of the pie and are presenting ourselves to that information as much as possible to expand our view. So I'm not saying that he hasn't done that. Please don't take me, don't quote me the wrong way. But what he said was interesting, because the first thing, and because he's scientific, he doesn't science, he is scientific in his approach, and he said, well, so really what all you're saying is that other species, other people out there, whoever they are, aliens, whoever, can travel faster than light.
We already have proven to you there is no such thing as time and space, guys.
That's
the shortest distance. The shortest distance between 2 points is nothing.
Exactly.
Sorry, go on.
That's right. And I tried to bring up the quantum view of the universe, and that quantum teleportation exists. Time and space is irrelevant, and any 2 points in the entire universe are in fact joined together. So that we only need to work this out. I said, what's really interesting about where we stand today is, and he made a really good point after this, right? And I said, where the differential between us and aliens is narrowing the differential. Say you take us back 100 years, big differential, not so much now. We're actually getting really close to where we could do the same thing that they're doing and go somewhere. And he said, well, why don't they interact with us? And I said, well, probably some kind of Space Corps directive, not allowed to, talk to subspecies. I don't know. Talk to the government first. That's probably clear to what they've done. So I liked that point that he took, which is his knowledge base, what he's working on, which was the speed of light. And I said, well, you know what? Speed of light isn't constant, number one. Number two, we can stop it. It's measured at different speeds through different mediums.
Yep.
So we know that it isn't a constant. It's not a constant. If it was a constant, it would travel the same speed through everything, but it doesn't. And we can stop it. And now we have more control. So we're getting closer and closer to the point where we can do what they do. And I gave him an example. I said, if we flew up to a planet and there was a bunch of, people on there without the same kind of technology that we had, are we likely to give it to them? Maybe it's been learned in the universe, consider this, guys, maybe the entire universe is teeming with life, and they're all varied, in what technology they have. Of course, that would be the case. But we're not going to rock up with our smartphones, for instance. I'm just kidding. We're not going to rock up with whatever technology we have and just give it to them. We're not going to be openly sharing it with anybody, I don't believe, because if we did that, are we not opening ourselves up to risk? Don't you have to mature into your technology? I think you do. And I think by maturing into your technology, you've taken the time to discover it, you've got over all the things you needed to do to get to that point, and I think it's that when you appreciate it. And you appreciate the technology because you walked with it to get there. I think if you give it to someone, it probably won't be appreciated as much. The mentality in which to drive the mechanism, whatever it is, won't be there. And maybe you have to have actually travelled in space via, I like this from the Star Trek world, via a particular method, not just chemical rockets. So if you can make anti-gravity yourself, cool. Maybe then you're indoctrinated instantaneously into the Galactic Federation. But until then, maybe not. Maybe you're just, you didn't get it. You're not going to be allowed into, say, I'm kidding, Mensa. It's like a university exam. You can't just go to uni whenever you want. You've got to sit an exam and prove yourself worthy of becoming, a university student within their fraternity. So the other thing is that you need to you can't just join Mensa. You have to have had an appreciable level of intelligence to become a member. So thinking about that would make sense. It would make sense that the people out there, and there would be people out there, there's like us, don't call them aliens. They're only alien to us. Remember, an illegal alien is someone who's not meant to be there. So are we saying the people from outside aren't allowed to be here? Sure they are, why not? It'd be great if my neighbour was an alien. Sorry, a person from another planet. That'd be awesome. I'd love that. Imagine the barbecue discussions. Fantastic. Share a beer with them. Find out what they did last century. Or 500 years ago, however long they lived. I think it'd be an amazing experience. But, as we know, it never works out for the lower species. Whoever has the lower technology, it never really works out for them. So if you're the landowner, maybe not. But talking about land, could you imagine, for instance, if the whole of Earth was only a single island? If we were just a single island on Earth, a single island, and if that's all we've got, and we didn't have territories, we had a single government to start with, if we only had one place to live, a single government, and one island, and we didn't have our own islands, so we could, evolve separately. If we only one place, we probably wouldn't have any conflict. If we would have been more respective of each other, probably a little scared of everybody else, to be honest. Anyone new might be scary if we've never met anyone new. And we're looking at like that for the last, 3, maybe 4,000 years we've behaved that way. And it's only been recent, since we've had serious technology, that we've become to use that on the people that we're scared of. So I think you're not going to be invited into the Galactic Federation unless you're ready to use that technology. You have to have made it yourself, and you probably have to have demonstrated that you can use it without, without war or something. I don't know. Think about that. They never used a nuke past Nagasaki.
You're exactly right. You're 100% correct. Now, the biggest divider that we have, of course, is language. Right, that's the biggest thing separating us. So you go back to the ancient myths of our languages becoming confused, and deliberately so. That has sown the discontent between us. I mean, of course, there are always people that are that want more, that are greedy, they think they're better than others, whatever it might be, and they will always be able to create tension. But I think you're right. I think we would not be in a situation as we are now if in fact it had been that way, right? If in fact we weren't as geographically distributed as we are, and human beings. In fact, if you talk to people in the street, all they want is just to live their life and be left alone. Pretty much, that's what they want to do. That's what people just want to get on with it, be good neighbors and whatever. But not everybody, Dave. And I'm thinking maybe there's some people here that are deliberately put here to just sow discontent. You know how the government places agitators into crowds?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying this is what it is, but just maybe there are in fact folk living today around here that are living amongst us just for that purpose, to sow discontent, to make it harder for everybody else to get along.
Hey.
I'm not saying...
Hey, Mackie, but that reminds me of a news story from this week.
Okay, go.
It is in Cuba. It's said that the US operatives put a software application in place that's purely within their own intranet, because they don't go outside of their own world.
Okay.
To create negativity towards, or propagate negativity towards the government. So they were with using positive reinforcement. It's like a Twitter application, using positive reinforcement and discussions based on trying to oust the government in Cuba and have political turnover. And that's what they've been accused of this week, the US. Had you heard that one?
I had not, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. Dissent.
Interesting. Yes. Interesting. Well, look, it makes perfect sense to do that, though. I mean, from a power perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. It's
divide
cheap.
and conquer.
Yeah.
It is cheap, right?
Mm.
Yeah. You're right. Forget about mind control. No. We just keep you in a permanent state of uncertainty and conflict. That'll do. Thank you very much. Yeah. So you don't interfere with what I want to do, and that's really the problem, guys. And we're coming up to the station break in just a few more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try after the break once again to get in touch with our guest, and
Yes.
it'd be great if we can. I would like to remind you that this is listener-funded radio, so listen to Guy Fawkes. Give. If you like what you're hearing, right? If you like what we bring to you, if you like what the other hosts are doing, if you like what Nighthawk is doing, it's a station that runs entirely on your good will. Okay.
Do you know what, Mickey?
Raised...
I'm going to donate $10. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to donate $10 every single show we do from now on.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
if you're in the chat room, I want you to push the donate button. If you're not in the chat room, get into the chat room, freedomslips.com, and push the donate button. And I want someone, honestly, to go into the chat and tell me how much that you donated during the break.
I can't see the donate button here.
On the left-hand side.
It's on the left under news and above chat links, guys. It's not very obvious. It's a discreet little button you can hit on the left-hand side.
So
it is.
Do take your time to locate the button and push it firmly with your mouse clicking finger. And please donate, because it does help to run the show. We're right in the beginning of the billing cycle, and we do need to lift the donations for this billing cycle. So we'll see you on the other side of the break. Shiny side adders.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. If you plan to call in and speak with one of our hosts, please turn down your radio and separate yourself from any background noise and wait for the area code to be called on before you speak. And don't forget, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com is listener supported. So stop by the homepage, freedomslips.com, visit the site support area to help support the host you're listening to's airtime. Thank you. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, the number 1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. Since it is listener-funded radio and you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button on the site support page. It's on the left in the chat. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. I just donated $10. Woo,
Sweet.
Me. Yeah,
Sweet.
me. Yeah, yay, me. So
Hasn't shown up yet, though.
Oh,
I don't think it's right?
It's
not instantaneous.
live-ish. Yeah,
Live-ish.
Yeah. I think it's only gained every hour or every 2 hours or something. So if you see the total change, it might not have been your one, but it was definitely someone's. I'd like to say hello to all the new listeners and out there. Thank you so much for coming on board with Shiny Side Out. We have so many people in the chat room now, it's going crazy. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, you really want to be part of the show, or you have something to contribute, you can either contact us through shinysideout.net, our website, or shinysideout.com.au, whichever you like, or you could just jump in the chat room while we're on air. Also, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can just, once again, look for Shiny Side Out. It's us. Pretty much, if you type Shiny Side Out into any browser, Google search or whatever your preferred browser search engine is, you will find us. Okay, we're at the top. We're halfway through. We're halfway shoe. What an incredible shoe!
It's a good shoe.
It's
a very comfortable shoe.
We're halfway through show number 110, Mickey. It's 10 and 100, isn't it?
10 and 100.
Yeah.
110, yes. Not binary, that'd be something else entirely. But yes, 10 and 100. That's awesome stuff.
And look, through the break, we weren't able to get in contact with our guest, which is a shame. It's a shame, Mickey, that we have this awkward time slot for the US guests that we want, and I'm not asking we go for a different time slot because it sort of makes me comfy. I like it. Just that we can't always pre-record them, and some like to do it live, but then they don't wake up to their alarm. So sorry about that, everyone. Well, look, we'll still continue, but to contact them and see if we can get them on.
That would be fabulous. Now, having said that, though, I mean, we do want to talk to you about something that we've put together. I don't think we'll have enough time to finish it today, considering it's the second half of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But we would like to, well, since we don't have to guess, we would like to talk to you about Terianthropy. Terianthropy, right?
It sounds
what is
like
that?
I need to go to the doctor.
Yes, well, if you have it, you should. No, it is in fact were-beasts.
Very
Werewolves,
nice.
were-tigers, and so forth. Interesting, very interesting. Feeds in with things we have talked to you about. It is, in fact, a myth, if you want to call it that is all-pervasive. Every culture talks about it on the planet. This capability of human beings to morph or shapeshift into an animal form and become something in between, like not quite animal and no longer fully man either. So it's a were-beast that we like to tell you. Now, first up though, it's most of the show is tinfoil head material. Hence, you need to fasten your seatbelts, adjust your tinfoil hats, keeping your arms in, thank you, Dave, at all times, and ensuring the shiny side faces out, and you must suspend all preconceived ideas.
No flash photography.
None of that. you will startle the animals. And it is quite popular, isn't it, Dave? This topic in popular culture, I think, right?
Yeah, in pop culture. I remember growing up and seeing that fantastic movie with tremendous effects, which was American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, that was
good. It really was. And, of course, David being the main character, I really took a shine to him for some reason, being my name. I really loved the movie. I love what it did. I love how they were cured. It's tremendous. But the other one, Michael J. Fox film, had more of a comical side to it. That was Teen Wolf.
Yes,
and of
correct.
course now we have the werewolves and vampires. You're Twihard, for Twilight series.
Yeah.
If you're a Twihard, you're not really into it that much. But so Twilight as well. It's great. It really is. It's quite an era we live in.
Yeah.
Remember that the focus through the 80s was pretty much all about you, whoever you were, and now it's about all of these magical things out there. I think some of those things that took us through that was also the Harry Potter series. Remembering
absolutely
the rats to people, people to rats, the wolves backwards and forwards in that as well. Yep.
No, you have to absolutely. I mean, it's the animagus. Now it was the the preoccupation with the fantastical started probably in the late 90s. Certainly in popular culture, you had, shows have always been around, but it really hit the big screen with Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Now there have been a few attempts to continue with that, and of course the Twilight series is part of it. You've got the other one is Percy Jackson, the Percy Jackson series, and there are more. There's a lot more, and you're right. The theme, as it were, and then you've got, of course, there's this really popular one, Underworld, or something like that, right? With where the Lycans, or the werewolves fight the vampires in an age-old feud, right? So now you can take that any which way you want, but certainly it does seem to preoccupy our mind, and it's right there as far as movie material is concerned. There's in fact a basis in mythology, and to some extent, I guess, reality, or accepted reality at some point, for all of this. Okay. Now, Terianthropy refers to the metamorphosis of humans into animals. That's essentially what Terianthropy means. And Therianthropes are said to change forms via shapeshifting, right? They've long existed in mythology and appear, okay, in ancient cave drawings, such as the sorcerer at Les Trois Frères, the three brothers.
Yes.
Okay, so that is actually part of like really old mythology. Okay, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years in the past. Now, the term itself comes from the Greek. Therion, meaning wild animal or beast, but the implication it's a mammal, and anthropos, and we spoke about this before, and that means human being. And it was used to refer to animal transformation folklore of Asia and Europe as early as 1901. Sometimes zoanthropy is used instead of therianthropy. It doesn't really matter too much. Now, therianthropy was also used to describe spiritual beliefs in animal transformation in 1915, and one source raises the possibility the term may have been used in the 16th century in criminal trials of suspected werewolves. Yes, the witch trials were in fact at the same time, or happening at the same time as the werewolf trials, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So you got some unfortunate people that are accused of being a werewolf or some kind of werebeast. Now, the origins are really interesting. And I'm going to share with you like a really obscure origin I found. In Galician, Portuguese, and Brazilian folklore, it is the seventh son that becomes a werewolf. Sometimes it's the seventh child, but usually, but it has to be a boy. Okay, it could be like 6 daughters, for instance, but it has to be a boy who becomes a werewolf. Now, this belief was so extended in North Argentina, where it is called the lobizon, that seventh sons, like the seventh son, was abandoned, given up to adoption, or killed. That's a real thing, guys. And a law from 1920 decreed that the president of Argentina is the godfather of every seventh son.
Wow.
Therefore, I know, right? Therefore, the state gives him a gold medal at his baptism and a scholarship until his 21st year. Now, that of course ended the abandonments and killings, I guess. But it is still traditional that the president is the godfather of every seventh son in Argentina. So that's a real thing, guys. That's what happened. Amazing stuff, right? If you think about it, I mean, obviously something must be going on there. But there are classical origins of werewolves as well, of course, and there are many different supposed origins of these creatures, but it's not really clear where it all started. And if we've got these cave paintings, you can imagine how old this whole thing is. However, most werebeasts, not just werewolves, attribute the origin to the Greek myth of Lycaon. Lycaon, you might be familiar with. In the accounts by the Bibliotheca 3.8.1 and Ovid, in Metamorphosis, chapter 1, 219 to 239, Lycaon, who is an Arcadian king, challenged Zeus's omniscience. So he challenged Zeus's god power by serving him a meal made of dismembered children, or a dismembered child. And then Lycaon attempted to murder Zeus in his sleep. None of this is any good, right? In return for these acts, Zeus destroyed Lycaon's sons and transformed him into a rampaging wolf. Okay, so we can see that Lycaon's transformation is punishment for a crime considered variously as murder, cannibalism, and impiety. Now, this is one of the classical accounts of where werewolves started. Ovid also relates a story or stories of men who roamed the woods of Arcadia in the form of wolves. A few references to men changing into wolves are found in ancient Greek literature and mythology. Right, so there's also Herodotus, who in histories wrote that the Neuri are a tribe which he places to the northeast of Scythia. Right, so we're moving toward the Black Sea there, where all transformed into wolves once a year for several days and then changed back to their human shape. In addition to Ovid, other Roman writers also mentioned lycanthropy. Now lycanthropes are werewolves specifically. Mm-hmm. Okay, Virgil wrote of human beings transforming into wolves. Pliny the Elder relates two tales of lycanthropy, and quoting Euanthes, he mentions a man who hung his clothes on an ash tree and swam across an Arcadia lake, transforming him into a wolf. On the condition that he attacks no human being for 9 years, he would be free to swim back across the lake to resume human form. So some kind of curse, I guess. Pliny also quotes Agropias regarding the tale of a man who was turned into a wolf after tasting the entrails of a human child, but he was restored to human form 10 years later. In the Latin work of prose, the Satyricon, written about 60 years before the Common Era, which is 60 years before the birth of Christ, if you're a Christian, by Gaius Petronius Arbiter. One of the characters, Niceros, tells a story at a banquet about a friend who turned into a wolf. And that's in chapters 61 to 62. The incident is described as follows. When I look for my buddy, I see it stripped and piled his clothes by the roadside. He pees in a circle round his clothes and then, just like that, turns into a wolf. After he turned into a wolf, he started howling and then ran off into the woods. In the 5th century, even Procopius recorded werewolf fight in a Roman army. So there were Roman soldiers. Now this is a lengthy extract. Bear with me. And with him 800 others perished after shewing themselves brave men in his struggle. And almost all the Isaurians fell with their leaders without even daring to lift their weapons against the enemy. For they were thoroughly inexperienced in this business, since they had recently left off farming and entered into the perils of warfare, which before that time were unknown to them. And yet, just before these very men had been most furious of all for battle because of their ignorance of warfare, and were then reproaching Belisarius with cowardice. They were not in fact all Isaurians, but the majority of them were Lacones, werewolves. Interesting, right? Other popular myth-related origins include the skinwalkers of the Navajo stories, and you've probably still in memory the times when we spoke about the Skinwalker Ranch and the phenomena associated with that, the big black dogs that disappeared, all the phenomena that couldn't be explained unless we somehow had access to higher dimensions and so forth. Now, this is all tying in. There are also werecats or were-tigers of India, Africa, and Asia. Okay, it's likely that most of these myths are partially true due to all the various types of werebeasts in the world. Now, let me say that again, right? These are all over the place. This is not some kind of cultural cross-contamination, right, Dave?
That's absolutely right.
So, let's spend some time with the werewolves. Dave?
Yeah, good on you. A werewolf is also known as a lycanthrope from the Greek. That's where we are, isn't it?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were at. And it's a combination of wolf and man. And it's a mythological or folkloric human with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf or a hybrid wolf-like creature, either purposefully or after being placed under a curse or affliction. So they've got the ability to turn backwards and forwards. We know in modern day, the moon, full moon, the fingernails. I even forgot Michael Jackson and Thriller.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
I forgot that.
Yes, totally.
Early sources for belief in werewolves are Petronius and Gervase of Tilbury. The werewolf is generally held as a European character, although its lore spread through the world in later times.
According to the source, which I disagree with.
Yeah, exactly. Ancient Turkic legends from Asia talk of shape-shifting shamans known as Kurt Adams or Kurtebans, which translate directly to Wolfman. The idea of being descendants from wolves has been part of the shamanistic beliefs, and shapeshifters similar to werewolves are common in tales from all over the world, although the definition specifically describes a metamorphic change from a human to canine form, as with werewolf, as we're familiar with in modern pop culture. The term is often used to refer to any human to non-human animal transformation, though. The werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants which are related to a common development of Christian interpretation of underlying Indo-European mythology, which developed during the medieval period, and that's what Meki spoke about a little earlier on. Like the witchcraft trials as a whole, this is what I liked, the trial of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland, especially the Valais. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. That's just a couple of regions, yeah.
Yeah, and Vaud in the early 15th century and spread throughout Europe in the 16th, peaking in the 17th and subsiding in the 18th century. The persecution of werewolves, there's always going to be persecution. They persecuted witches, for crying out loud, yeah, the witch hunts. The persecution of werewolves in associated folklore is an integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one. Accusations of, werewolfery.
Werewolfery, I love that.
That's right. Being involved in only a small faction of the witchcraft trials. During the early period, accusations of being a werewolf or transforming into a werewolf were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. The case of Peter Stump.
Yeah, that's right.
Double
the
P.
second P is silent.
Yeah, that's hence the. In 1589, the case of Peter Stump in 1589 led to a significant peak in both interest in and the persecution of supposed werewolves, primarily in French-speaking and German-speaking Europe. You know, I think people were very scared of anything that was different. You know,
totally.
You know, if like I said before, if my neighbour was alien, I wouldn't mind. But if my neighbour was a werewolf, you know, I'd huddle my children closer to me.
Right.
The phenomenon persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, with persecutions of wolf charmers recorded until well after 1650. Like, just being a wolf charmer, like, what? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. Hey, I just like wolves. They're nice.
I'll burn you.
Did I say wolves? No. The final cases taking place in the early 18th century during the Carinthia and Styria times. Wow. So what else was there?
Well, this is this case of Peter Stump that you mentioned, right? This is a really interesting case. And it might have religious connotations, which I will outline as well. So during 1589, as Dave highlighted, Stump had one of the most lurid and famous werewolf trials in history. Okay, now, after being stretched on a rack, which is not pleasant anywhere, and before further torture...
in Iraq.
No, on a rack. And before further torture commenced, he confessed to having practiced black magic since he was 12 years old. Now, let me just quickly say something about that. If you're tortured to that extent, you will tell anyone anything. Okay, that's the problem with torture, right? If you're an interrogator for anyone, for the army, just ask them if you know them, right? You know that I'm talking what I'm talking about. You know that torture is useless to extract information, totally.
Meki,
Because eventually,
I'm a
Yep.
chicken, Meki. I was tortured and I was asked to say whether I was or wasn't a chicken.
right?
I'm a chicken.
Ah,
They told
every
me
day,
to say it.
100%. And black is white. That's right.
Yes, yes, that's
Right.
right. That was also part of the interrogation.
Right, I believe you. Now, so let's just bear this in mind as we keep on going. Now, he claimed that the devil made me do it, had given him a magical belt or girdle, which enabled him to change into the likeness of a greedy, devouring wolf, strong and mighty, and so forth, and all those wonderful things. Removing the belt, he said, made him transform back to his human form. Now, I don't know how a wolf would take off a belt having no opposable thumbs, but let that be, stand as the record shows. For 25 years, Stump allegedly had been an insatiable bloodsucker who gorged on the flesh of goats, lambs, and sheep, as well as men, women, and children. Okay? Being threatened with torture, like we said, he confessed to killing and eating 14 children, 2 pregnant women, and I won't go into the details here because it's a bit...
Too much detail.
It's bit graphic, yep. One of the 14 children apparently was his own son, whose brain he was reported to have eaten as well. And not only was Stump, yes, I know, was Stump accused of being a serial killer, or at least that's what we call him today, and cannibal, but also of having an incestuous relationship with his daughter. He was an all-around nice guy, right? Who was sentenced to die with him, and he coupled with a distant relative, which was also considered to be incestuous according to the law. So he was a bit of a strange character. I will tell you, though, a bit of a sideline to that. In addition to this, he confessed to having had relations with a succubus, which was sent to him by the devil. We have discussed succubi and incubi at a previous show. The execution of Stump on October 31, 1589, October 31, Halloween. There's no coincidence here, my friends. There is no coincidence. This is just the day before All Hallows Eve. Or it is All Hallows Eve. In Germany, it's November 1 is Allerheiligen. So
Yep.
that's when the dead are meant to walk the earth. Anyway, so he was executed October 31st, and so the execution of both him and his daughter and his mistress is one of the most brutal on record. I will tell you what happened to him. He was put to a wheel where flesh was torn from his body in 10 places with red-hot pincers, followed by his arms and legs. Then his limbs were broken with the blunt side of an axe head to prevent him from returning from the grave, before he was beheaded and burned on a pyre. His daughter and mistress had already been flayed, which means skinned, and strangled, and were burned along with Stump's body. As a warning against similar behavior, local authorities erected a pole with a torture wheel and the figure of a wolf on it, and at the very top they placed Peter Stump's severed head. Now,
they were serious.
right? Now that guy's dead, all right. Now, there needs to be something said. Now, it was very cruel. It was not, that unusual to kill people in that fashion back in the day, especially if the crimes that he was accused of were true. They're heinous crimes. There's no doubt about it. However, there's a slightly more disturbing dimension to this. You have to understand that this was just before the 30 Years' War. Now, what's the 30 Years' War? The 30 Years' War is a war between ostensibly the Catholics and the Protestants in Europe. Okay, it lasted for 30 years and devastated Europe, including my hometown in Spich, hometown which is only 10,000 strong today, and back in the day it would have been a few thousand only, like a small village, but it was destroyed during the 30 Years' War. Now, what does that mean? It means that Stump quite possibly was a Protestant. Okay, he was quite possibly a Protestant who had, moved away from the church, the Catholic Church at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore his punishment may have been exacerbated by that fact. Was he guilty of those crimes? Well, we don't know. It's possible. But as I said, under torture, you will confess to anything. And the funny thing is, this was right near my hometown in Bedburg, Cologne. Where he was executed, so it's a bit of a close call for me to some extent. But just bear in mind, just because someone is accused of something, and it goes today as well, doesn't mean it is so. And just because someone confesses, doesn't mean they actually did it. Okay, especially confession under torture is useless as far as I'm concerned.
Completely.
Radio.
Yeah. So, well, since it's so far back, Mickey, there's no chance that you're related.
Well, no, let's hope not. Eh?
well, we'll talk off air. Thank you. The last time I saw he had mud on him, he did shake a bit. So, no, it's all good. I kid. So, the other thing, outside of werewolves, there are were-dogs, if you didn't know. And that's Terianthropy. Synanthropy, I'm sorry. The Greeks also spoke of this, and I think it's Quinoa dog.
Yeah, that Greek word. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I don't think they wah. I don't think they have a wah sound. But anyway, sometimes it's spelled differently. Instead of with a C, it's with a K. So it doesn't look like Sinan. It's Kainan. Maybe it's pronounced with a K or a K sound. Is applied to shapeshifters. So that's being able to alternate between being a dog form and a human form, or to beings that do not shapeshift but possess combined dog and human anatomical features. And I think there's a reference in there that mentions Hamel 76. It is also used for real persons suffering from the delusion that they are a dog. Another reference, Ashley 37. After lycanthropy, synanthropy is the best known term for a specific variety of. Now, what do we call it? Terianthropy?
Yeah, synanthropy. Yep.
Is it? Oh, okay. No, the last one.
Terianthropy. Yeah,
that's right. The term existed by at least 1901, when it was applied to myths from China about humans turning into dogs becoming people, and sexual relations between humans and canines. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at you, Holland. I'm looking. I'm sorry. I kid. My father was Dutch, so that's very funny. Anthropologist. It's not even funny to me. Anthropologist David Gordon White called Central Asia the vortex of synanthropy, because races of dogmen were habitually placed there by ancient writers. I think that's interesting that someone could point that out. They found that. That's a researcher. Hindu mythology puts races of dog cookers to the far north of India. Guess where that is? What did India run into? The continent. So
Asia?
Asia, correct. The Chinese placed dog Zheng and other human canine barbarians to the extreme west, and European legends, which is Europe, and European legends frequently put the dogmen called cynocephali in unmapped regions to the east. So everyone seems to be blaming everyone.
Yeah.
In the region.
But ancient maps, if you see old maps like from that time period, even European maps of Asia and so forth, you do see like drawings of people with dog heads and such. It's very interesting.
And remember that if you go back to the Egyptians, in a very similar way, they had animal heads on people's bodies. So there are birds, there are what looks like a wildebeest kind of head as well. There are dogs. So typically birds, but there are others. Some of these races were described as humans with dog heads, others as canine shapeshifters. The were-dog is also known in Timor. It is described as a human/canine shapeshifter who is also capable of transforming other people. Oh, that's interesting. Into animals against their will. These transformations are usually into prey animals such as goats, so that the person, the were-dog, can chase them down and devour them. So like for fun or play, or even just for sustenance. But it wouldn't be as exciting doing it to another human rather than turning it into their prey of choice.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's actually a common motif in some fairy tales in Germany as well, where they were transformed into mice or geese or whatever to be roasted. Once again, I've said it last week. If you watch Spirited Away, the Japanese anime, you will find that the parents of the girl were transformed into pigs to be eaten by the spirits as well. So there's this common theme here that goes across the world, where people are being transformed into a weaker creature so it can be devoured by a stronger.
In pop culture at the moment, in a comparison to this, when the person is deceased, they turn back to their originating creature. So that's in pop culture. We're not talking about what we've found here. So Meki, why don't you take were-cats?
Were-cats, Terianthropy, were-cats. So now European folklore usually depicts were-cats who transform into domestic cats, sometimes of a large size, or even panthers, and sometimes also familiars. I don't know if you're a witch, you usually have a familiar, and the cat is usually your familiar, but that cat can also transform into a person. Okay, so it's a bit back and forth. African legends describe people who turn into lions or leopards, while Asian were-cats are typically depicted as tigers. Again, it depends where you are in the world and what kind of large cats you have. Mm-hmm. The transformation of each individual animal cat possesses its own version of the were title, so were lion, were leopard, were jaguar, and so forth. The general classification of were-cats typically applies to all, excluding circumstances between were-cats whom identify each species by the appropriate specific title. And were-cats have been represented as typically living in prides regardless of sub-classification. So they actually hang out together, as it were, even though leopards and jaguars and cheetahs and panthers usually do not seek the company of each other. It's only lions that mingle in prides. So, which brings us to a much, much more interesting component, the skinwalkers, Dave.
Oh, yes. Some Native American legends talk about skinwalkers, persons with the supernatural ability to turn into any animal they desire. Though, to be able to transform, they first must be wearing a pelt of the animal. We know this to be similar to the shaman's work. In the folk religion of neighboring Mesoamerica, the Nagual or Nahual is a human being who has the power to magically turn themselves into an animal form, most commonly donkeys, turkeys, and dogs, but other animal or more powerful animals such as the jaguar or puma, not puma.
Which brings us to the final, or not the final one, but I guess the final animal component, which is called Terianthropy. Now, Terianthropy can also refer to artistic descriptions of characters that simultaneously share human and non-human animal traits. For example, the animal-headed humanoid form of gods depicted in ancient Egyptian religion, such as Ra and Anubis and so forth, as well as creatures like centaurs and mermaids.
Yes.
In fact, there are stories of people changing into dolphins and into, more specifically, manatees. I don't know if you're familiar with the manatee. It's dugong in Australia. It's a funny-looking creature, and a lot of people believe that it's the origin of the mermaid legends. I personally believe they actually may be mermaids, but it's quite human-looking, though, don't you think? The manatee.
In fact, I was at the Australian Museum just the weekend before, and they have hands, but they're flippered.
Yep.
All the bones exist, all of them, except for the thumb, which is significantly shorter. But they do have hands inside and legs with feet and toes, and their foot structure is very similar, except it isn't weight-bearing. So it is extraordinary. Even my children were able to point that out, that they were ironically identical, except for some of the slight variations in bone size. And for someone who's so young to make that that connection between them, do you know what? I lean towards what you're saying there, Mackie. I really do.
Look, it's interesting stuff, right? We should not forget, though, that there's actually such a thing as clinical lycanthropy, meaning it's actually a condition recognized in psychiatry, like a disorder, if you will, where people believe themselves to be, in fact, werebeasts. Okay, so it is being treated as a psychiatric disorder. I think that's actually a really good theme for a horror movie, by the way, if anyone's listening. Okay, so just now, among a sample set of psychiatric patients, the belief of being an animal or part animal was generally associated with severe psychosis, but not always with any specific psychiatric diagnosis or neurological findings, right? Now, others regard this clinical lycanthropy as a delusion in the sense of the self-identity disorder found in affective and schizophrenic disorders, or as a symptom of other psychiatric disorders, right? It is defined as a rare psychiatric syndrome that involves the delusion that the affected person can transform into and has transformed into, or is a non-human animal. Its name is connected to the mythical condition of lycanthropy, a supernatural affliction in which humans are said to shapeshift. We've discussed this. Now, what are the symptoms for this? Affected individuals report a delusional belief that they are in the process of transforming into an animal or have already transformed into an animal. It has been linked with the altered states of mind that accompany psychosis, the reality-bending mental state that typically involves delusions and hallucinations, with the transformation only seeming to happen in the mind and behavior of the affected person. I'm going to say something to that in a second. A study on lycanthropy from the McLean Hospital reported on a series of cases and proposed some diagnostic criteria by which lycanthropy could be recognized. Now, there are two, in fact. A patient reports in a moment of lucidity, which is when they're with us, or looking back, that he or she sometimes feels as an animal or has felt like one. A patient behaves in a manner that resembles animal behavior, for example, crying, grumbling, or creeping. According to these criteria, either a delusional belief in current or past transformation or behavior that suggests a person thinks of themselves as transformed is considered evidence of clinical werewolvism. The authors go on to note that although the condition seems to be an expression of psychosis, there's no specific diagnosis of mental or neurological illness associated with its behavioral consequences. So it seems that it might be a culturally exposed phenomenon. Okay? Now, there are a number of other symptoms which will be part of the show notes as well, right? Now, the final point, though, on this from the literature is that a review of the medical literature from early 2004 lists over 30 published cases of lycanthropy, only the minority of which have wolf or dog themes. Canines are certainly not uncommon, although the experience of being transformed into a hyena, cat, horse, bird, or tiger has been reported on more than one occasion, and transformations into frogs and even bees, which I think is fascinating, have been reported in some instances. Now, I want to put something out here. Put your tinfoil hat on, guys.
Oh, it's firmly on.
Shiny side out. What if, in fact, they lived in a reality where they do indeed transform into a werebeast? What if that was their reality? But it can't be shared by us because we don't inhabit that reality. So we only see what we see, but for them it is real. Okay? For them it is real and it happens. And if they're not locked up, they may kill people. Who knows what happens? But my point is that maybe, and this is a slightly larger topic than we're discussing right now, but maybe we're living in shared realities. Maybe we're living in shared realities. What do I mean by that? Now, I think you might all be familiar with the multiverse theory, right? This is a theory that we're living in many parallel dimensions. In fact, infinite. There's an infinite number of realities that are all next to each other, and commonly they do not intersect. However, what if they did intersect? And a lot of the phenomena we've discussed with you over the last 2 years would indicate that maybe some intersection is taking place. Maybe some bleeding of realities seems to be happening, right? Different physical phenomena, different laws of nature, different sightings of different things, just unexplained phenomena. Now, what if people in their mind, what if their mind were to slip into another reality, right? Their physical body is still here. because it is parallel, everything else is the same, but they become a wolf or bee or crocodile or whatever. So now, this it sounds crazy, but the point I'm trying to make is that we can't dismiss things out of hand. I think reality is a lot more complex and mysterious than we give it credit for, right? I think the delusional state is that we all experience the same thing. I think that's the delusion. Okay, I think the delusion is that the life is just clinical and straightforward, and everything is explicable, and we don't have any mysteries. I think that's the delusion. I think the reality is that life is very, very, very mysterious indeed, and there's a lot more things between heaven and earth than we would ever have been taught in school. So, and we spoke about this before as well, Dave. Remember, we talked about people in psychiatric hospitals. I mean, what would happen if Jesus was born today? They'd lock him up. Right.
Completely, yes. You walk up to anyone, particularly if maybe a government or someone, and say, "I am Jesus." That's
okay.
That's the last time anyone saw you.
Yep, absolutely. In fact, Charles Fort, and I think we shared this with you guys before in the Dimensional Travels show, said, "Let's go and look in the loony bins and psychiatric asylums and see who's in there. Maybe there are dimensional travelers or time travelers, that are stuck here for some reason, and that have been locked up because what they say doesn't make any sense, and it can't be true, right, Dave? It's not possible.
Right.
You saw a UFO? That's impossible. That's just not, So let's keep an open mind here, and this is why we're bringing you these topics. I mean, this might seem slightly out of kilter or off the beaten track, but all of these phenomena, in my mind, are pretty much linked. Okay, they're all manifestations of some underlying mystery which we have not fully understood yet.
Mm-hmm. Next time I turn into a bee, Mackie, please do not ask me what all that yellow, orangey goop is on my legs. Just don't. Right? You know what it is.
Promise. Cross my heart.
Stop asking.
Done.
Yeah. So, look, there's a good question in the chat room here. Noodles83 said, did the Department of China call all of the Tibetan monks werewolves of, and I can't say the word. I'm not sure. We'd have to look that up. But it's an interesting fact to bring up. I shouldn't say fact. It's an interesting question. It is something else. Now, we know about how shamans, and this is a part for probably part 2 of the show, but just to edge into it a little, and that is that the shamans do the same thing. They put a bit of that animals, because they're animal guides. North American Indians, they have an animal guide. They'll have a what's it called? A medicine blanket with some stones and things that are important to them, and a medicine pouch, I think it's called. And they'll have, maybe a feather if they've got a hawk or an eagle as their guide, and it'll be part of them. And if I was to be, say, I don't know, guided by a wolf, for instance, that I might have, part of the dried skin and wear that as part of the ritual in being like them or thinking like them. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm with you.
It's one of those things. If I wanted to transform myself and the way I think into it, which is sort of the way that I suspect it's been done, I like the aspect that you brought up, which was alternate reality. Maybe it really is happening. Maybe only the facet, one of the many facets of all of these realities that we see. Maybe it doesn't happen on this one. Maybe it does happen on the other one.
Yep.
And just because it isn't in this one, does it mean it isn't real? And that's the ultimate, the real question here. And like I said earlier in the show, that the closer we get to alien technology, that as lessening the differential between us, that we have a greater understanding of what they do and how they work and everything like that. It's not this guessing game of this. It's just magic. Well, in similar function to this. If we, just deny that it happens because it doesn't happen to me, I've never seen it. I've seen foxes and I've seen wolves and I've seen blah, blah, blah. I've seen bees. But I haven't seen them turn from one to another. And so I'm going to say it isn't true because I never turned into one. And that's pretty much the way that we're treating people with medication to stop them trying to think this stuff. But I think Meki is also beautifully right here, and do that. Go into the funny farms and maybe get a picture of what's really going on.
Yes. And I mean, it's one thing to dismiss out of hand. I mean, we spoke about the dimensional travelers, and we've only got a 10-minute frame left here, so we can't finish today's topic. We'll finish it next week. But we spoke about the dimensional travelers, or supposed dimensional travelers. The men from Tau Red, and people that were found speaking funny language that nobody understood, or the guy that came to Japan in a plane, landed,
yes,
right, and he had a passport, as I said, from Tau Red, that the country that in Europe that didn't exist in our reality, at least.
Mm-hmm.
He had money from there, he had his passport was stamped with all the right stamps from all the other countries, and then he disappeared out of his hotel room, a locked hotel room under police guard. So you can make of that what you will.
I wonder
if
if
it
that
was a hoax.
was Malaysian Airlines.
Hey, maybe it was. Maybe they're taking revenge. Now you
No,
can make of that,
maybe they swapped an aircraft for another one and it just landed.
Hey, you know what?
What?
Now think about this for a second. Right? Let's just take it. I know.
Let's workshop
So
this.
the plane has disappeared, right?
Mhm.
Okay, it has disappeared. Now the guy on the plane, obviously, in his mind was always on the plane, but he must have appeared, I guess, on the plane on the flight, right?
Yep.
Is my supposition here, right? Now, the whole phenomenon, I'm not saying that's what happened, but what I'm saying is that it could have happened to the whole plane. The whole plane could have moved out of our dimension into another. We've mentioned this to you guys. And I mean, there's some, I wouldn't call it evidence, but there's some stories around this possibility. I mean, it's not entirely impossible that this could have happened. So Malaysian airline, MH something or other, 370, that's it, may very well have landed in an alternate version of China, in which the country of Malaysia did not exist, and in fact was French Indochina or southern or southern India or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter. The point is that it is quite possible that those guys shifted out of our reality, and then maybe shifted back, and that's why we got this funny flight path as well, and then shifted again and so forth. So we can look here until the end of time and never find them because they're no longer here. Now, I think it's more likely they're sitting at Diego Garcia, but that's beside the point. Let's just try to keep an open mind here about what could have happened. I mean, this is fascinating stuff if you really think it through until the last consequence. I mean, there's so many missing people. Maybe they just walked into other dimensions. I mean, I'm not saying that's what had happened, but it's a possibility. Always carry some matches, guys. Okay, and a little bit of food and water with you, just in case. I know this is going to sound crazy, but that's exactly what I do. I carry all that stuff just in case I get sucked into a dimensional vortex. Maybe I've read too much science fiction. But it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Okay, in any case, it doesn't hurt to be prepared. It's fascinating stuff. I like this is probably one of my favorite topics ever. This dimensional travel stuff, simply because I believe I've shifted a couple of times in my life. Everything remained the same except for a couple of things that I knew to be different, but nobody else recognized as having existed before. So that was, maybe I'm delusional, but that was my proof that something had changed or shifted. It's very difficult to put your finger on it.
Did you know, Meki, I was listening to a fellow talk. We'll do a whole show on it, and he was basically describing the Matrix, and this was back in the 70s. He said deja vu is when they change something, just like in the Matrix. It's in the 70s. It's on video, and what's interesting is I heard another person talking about deja vu and saying what happens if you get that feeling like the two times are intersecting, which is what deja vu really feels like, but you're feeling it in advance. And what happens? Have you ever felt like you've jumped rails? Meki, you felt like you've jumped rails from one to another, and that you've altered what's in front of you.
Yeah, it's a very trivial story, No, like it's coupled with deja vu. I had dreamt something, and I remembered what was happening. Now, I can't recall what it was. It was something simple as taking a glass out of a shelf or something, right? And I chose not to do what I remembered having done in my dream. So I did not follow my deja vu, right? So I actually made a conscious decision to not take the cup out of the cupboard, whatever it was. And at that point, you're right. I did feel like a jarring sensation, entirely internal, of course. There was no shaking of the world or anything. It was me that felt the jarring sensation, or like a changing of tracks, as you put it so eloquently. So I've experienced it. And if you're telling me that this guy has talked about it, that's quite amazing stuff.
And there was two people. He was one guy, and there was a lady who was talking about it in a different context on a different show, and I think it was the ABC News Radio.
Wow, really?
Who was talking about upcoming show or something like this, and I just thought that was truly amazing. I mean, it's one thing to talk to an expert who's been doing research in the field, but then to hear like directly, and to have them bouncing ideas off you, but to hear this being replicated on a channel that you don't have connection with, I just thought that was something else, and I had to bring it up with you, and I had to be on air because it is such a revelation to hear that jumping rails description of messing with the deja vu.
Wow, and there's the music.
Don't try it at home, though, people. That's been show 110, Shiny Side Out, and we'll see you next week for 111.